Welcome to Breakout Ninja, where I have 5 ideas around engagement that seems to work well online, maybe even better than we can do in face-to-face. So let me explain the influences on my thinking. Clearly, the strategy 2025, particularly around student-focused, transformational, including wherever and whenever people are. There's also some recent literature. Brown has an interesting framework around helping people to engage in an online setting. And of course, I've always had a following of Stephen Brookfield around critical thinking and critical practice and reflecting on my teaching. And I've even shared some of his thinking with students successfully. Here's the first idea, and we've been doing this forever, trying to align groups in small discussions, whether it's in class or online. And this is just a bit of a summary of learning, participation, and engagement of students leading into the class. So before we have any breakouts, I normally have this lined up per class. And then I corral students at the start of every class using a waiting room. I just started doing this. It's really easy to do. So whilst they're waiting, and I only leave them in there for maybe 60, 90 seconds, there's some short videos, maybe picking up from the last session or the last course they did. There's a small word search puzzle that reminds them and again nudges their thinking around how do we participate. This is taken from the rubric. There's often really hands-on elements that students need to have to be fully engaged, and if they don't have those resources. So reminders like that have been really useful, and they always find time for a quick initial warm-up breakout activity of some sort that gives students a chance to get their mind into gear, and it gives me a chance again to gauge how well prepared students are and how I might pivot around the breakout activities that were planned for that session. The other thing, I always use focus mode. It's a pretty new feature from Zoom. I wish I could find a hotkey to use it, but it enables you to zero in on just your slides or your face, and removes any distractions, so that's worthwhile. So I give lots of instructions and prompts to remind students what to do, even kooky videos I've built to just remind them all the while to develop their higher level thinking skills around blooms. And there's more specific instructions. Of course, we have multiple role changes, role plays, and various activities. We can do that even better in remote classes because you can't have very quick breakouts with different groups in a face-to-face world, unless it causes a bit of mayhem in the classroom. But of course, I give them fun reminders and even sounds and other bits and pieces when they come back to the class, but just keeping them on track so that we don't lose them. Another way of keeping them on track is I've been monitoring their status in breakout rooms for a couple of years now. This is pretty easy to do. I've used an iPad as another device, and it just floats around, and I could just see who's engaging in discussion and duck in if I need to. Well, beauty of Zoom is they've now enhanced the feature so you can select these activity status elements so that you can see what's going on in breakout rooms. Really useful, and it's also good for students to understand that they're being monitored and there's a reason for it, and it helps them stay engaged. The other thing I've done is specifically plant somebody into a small group discussion, particularly where there's a paired discussion with lots of rapid exchanges, and call them an observer or monitor. But these students really enjoy that activity. They come back and share their reflections with the class. It helps the students in the breakout room. And often there's a need to pivot because you have an odd number of students or someone's dropped in and out due to technical problems. So that's worked really well. And it also works well for very short exchanges and giving students a chance to share their learning. If there's lots of rapid steps, having an observer monitor is useful, but there's also opportunity for them to share their learning in very small breakout rooms. Now you can do this in face-to-face, but I've been able to do it multiple times because it's almost instant. Students are used to it. They can be a breakout room for 2 minutes and come back, and you can't get people to move around in the face-to-face world. They'd complain about that after a couple of moves, I'd imagine. So my last idea is a simple but probably the most effective one in many ways. Students can always stay discussing, collaborating, socializing at the end of all of my Zoom classes because I leave this backdoor exit. I won't slam the door on them. I leave it running. So the Zoom meeting runs and they can voluntarily go to their breakout rooms and chat. Often they do this for hours at a time after class, which I think is wonderful. In fact, the other night I made a mistake and I inadvertently closed my iPad after dinner, and students were still going almost 3 hours online, meaning that's 1 hour after class. So that's a really worthwhile idea, but I'm sure you have many better ideas. So let's talk about how you utilize Zoom engagement techniques.